This lesson is on finding the least common multiple. And the least common multiple, or LCM for short, is the smallest number that our other numbers go into. So the smallest number that is a multiple of the other numbers. One method for finding this is simply to list the multiples of 8, so 8 times 1, times 2, times 3, times 4, etc. And then the same for 12, times 1, times 2, times 3, etc. And I keep going until I find a number that matches. And I'm looking for the smallest number that matches. So if I kept my 8 row going, my next number would be 48, and we can see there would be a 48 on top and on bottom, but I'm looking for the smallest number, so 24 is my value. 24. I'm also going to show you how to do this with our prime factorization. And we have done prime factorization by making our factor trees. So if I made a factor tree for 8, it would be 2 times 2 times 2, and for 12 it would be 2 times 2 times 3. And when I do this using the prime factorization method, I'm going to multiply every pair of numbers, and then I'm also going to multiply when things are left over. Another way to think about this, because this will get tricky when we get to 3 numbers or 4 numbers, is this is 2 to the third, and this is 2 squared times 3. So I want the most number of times a factor happens. So most number of times a factor happens in one number or in one value. So 2 happens 3 times here and twice here. So the most is 3 times, so 1, 2, 3. And 3 happens 0 times here. We haven't really talked about an exponent of 0, but doesn't happen in 8, but happens once in 12. And so notice I've taken it times 1. The other way to think about this is, of course, that I have 2 pairs and then these 2 singles, and I have to account for every single number. So my answer is 24, which is the same answer I got before. Let's do both of these together. So 4 and 10, again, if I'm using my prime factorization, 4 is 2 times 2, or 2 squared, and 10 is 2 times 5. There's no or on that one. If I'm using just the matching here, I would match up a pair of 2's with an extra 2 and an extra 5 left over. So my LCM is 2 from the pair, 2 from the single, and 5, and that gives me 20. If I'm looking at the exponents, the most number of times 2 happens is twice, and the most number of times 5 happens is once, and again, I still get 20 for my solution. For my second question, the prime factorization of 7 is 7, of 14 is 2 times 7, and of 21 is 3 times 7. So my LCM would be the most number of times that 2 happens, which is once, the most number of times 3 happens, which is once, and the most number of times 7 happens, which is just once. Even though it happened 3 times, it's just once per number. So 2 times 3 times 7 is 42. Whichever method you would like, go ahead and do both of these questions. So press pause, do them both, and press play to see how you did. Be very careful on question number 2. So for question 1, if I'm using my prime factorization method, 15 breaks down into 3 times 5, and 40 breaks down into 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. So again, the most number of times that 2 happens is 3, so 2 to the third. The most number of times that 3 happens is once, and the most number of times 5 happens is once per number. So 2 to the third times 3 times 5 is 120. Now, this second question is a little bit trickier. 3, obviously the prime factorization is 3. 12, the factorization is 2 times 2 times 3, and 14 is 2 times 7. Now, people often kind of mess this one up because if you're just looking for pairs, notice I don't have any pairs of anything or triples that I could really match up. However, to find the LCM, I'm taking the most number of times that 2 happens, which is twice, so I'm really just ignoring this one completely. So 2 happens twice, 3 happens once per number, but it doesn't matter, once in a number, and then 7 happens once. So that's my LCM. So it's very easy to add the extra 2 because I've got this 2 down here, but I'm looking for the most number of times that 2 happens to use in the question. So I'm really just going to multiply 2 times itself, so 2 times 2 is 4, and then times 3 is 12. 12 times 7 is 84, and that would be my least common multiple.